everybody. Hopefully this is going to be it. I re-recorded this a number of times. The last time it was a good take, but I forgot to switch the audio on. I'm using my studio mic, which I haven't been able to use before because my audio interface was out of date and they didn't support Windows 8. It was so old. I got a new audio interface, but then I've been having a problem getting it set up. I kept getting a noise and I finally figured out, I think, where the noise was coming from. But anyway, to make a long story longer, Mark Williams was wanting to know more about the Transpose tool. Ryan Kingsline suggested that I do a tutorial, and I thought that was a good idea, so here I am. And I hope it comes in handy. So this is all about the Transpose tool. I've been writing down everything I can remember. Hopefully I don't forget anything. I'll try to make this not drag out forever. So up at the top here, the hotkeys are Q for draw, W for move, E for scale, and R for rotate. So we're going to hit W. And first off, the Transpose tool snaps to points on your model. So that's very handy. This is really easy to snap to, but let's say you have a model that's got a lot of curves and whatever to it. So you're drawing across here and you think you're going straight across, but it's actually snapping over there on the surface there. One thing you can do when you're drawing out is hit shift. It'll snap to the world axis like that. Another thing you could do is just draw it off the model. If you draw it clear off the model, it won't snap to it, and it'll be in line with the world axis. So those are two ways of making sure that it's going where you want it to. Okay, the move function, this middle button here, I'm going to call them buttons. That will move the model. If you hold shift, it'll move only along the line of the transpose line, like so. The outer button, I'm going to call the outer one the last one after you draw it out, and I'll call the first one the root. Anyway, this outer button will skew the model. Hold shift and it'll constrain it to that line. The inner or root button will flatten your model. Oh, also, if you just grab that orange line, it can reposition. You can also use the line that connects them all together. If you're in the middle of the model and you're using the skew function, the outer button, it's going to pull from behind the Transpose tool as well. So if you don't want that to happen, you just want to pull this edge down to the other one. You have to make sure that you've got the root at the edge there. That way it just pulls in like that. Let's say you wanted to pull from this side instead. You just tap the outside of the orange ring, you'll now be able to do that. If you just tap inside, you'll flatten your model. That could be very not fun, especially if you didn't know what was going on. The scale, the outside button will scale everything inward equally. The middle button will scale perpendicular to the transpose line. And it'll scale towards that root, wherever the root is. Let's divide this up a little. If you hit this white circle right here, it's going to center the transpose line right in the middle of the model. If you had part of this masked off, it's going to center itself in the unmasked area. So let's say that you have this cuboid shape and everything's masked off except for that face. It's going to center itself right in that face, right on it. If you're not masked and you use the center button while it's in move mode, this is with control, you duplicate the model. And if you hold shift down as well, you duplicate the model along that line, the way the action line is pointing. See these crosshairs, whatever you want to call them? This will change the axis for you if you want to switch axis, and they will be on the world axis. So even if you drew out like this, you still have access to the axis, to the world axis. Access to the axis. And if you hit the white circle, when there's multiple tools, everything's masked except this one. It's going to center in that one. If there was no mask, hit the white circle, it's going to center within all those. It'll figure out the center of all those put together. There's another feature of that white circle. In the last version of ZBrush, 4R6, the white circle would tilt the camera view to be in line with the transpose line. And here I'll demonstrate what I mean. And it came in very handy if you wanted to like put something like a slot in that was at that angle. So if you hold control now and tap on that white circle, the camera will shift itself. So then you can add things that way. Let's do a slice rectangle, demonstrate that way. I need to turn on polyframe. There we go. And voila. So control, white circle, gives you camera adjusting itself to the direction of the line. Also, when you're in move mode, well, in move, scale, or rotate, if you hold down control and you click on a polygroup, Oh, I know what the problem is. There's two different transpose tools and I had the wrong one picked. So the normal transpose tool, hold down Control and you click on a polygroup, it'll mask everything but that polygroup. I guess they don't always align with the axis. I thought they had done something with it in one of the versions, but most of the time it does. Also, holding Control and Shift when the part of the object is masked will allow you to extrude. So I have part of it hidden. Control E will add an edge loop around that there. That will give it a nice clean edge if you add an edge loop to it before you extrude. We'll do this again. Control W, make those a different polygroup. Then Control click with scale. Control Shift. And as you can see, it's scaling towards that pivot point, the root there. These other ones, we don't want that, so you would want to turn on local sim. And that would mean that it's all going to, oh, it still does it. So you wouldn't want that, you'd want these to be a different polygroup. Just hide them. And then switch back to move. Actually, what I do is Control E, bring everything back, Control, click, Shift, Control, Shift, and so on and so forth. Very handy features, especially for hard surface. Oh, I didn't cover rotate. Okay, so rotate selected, draw out an action line. The root will be the pivot. If use the center button, the action line will be the pivot. It's very handy for certain cases. Another feature is topological masking. It's best to start close to where you want it to mask, rather than like you don't want to start out here to start masking. Sometimes it's rather tricky. A lot of times I'll start down here instead. Come on. Oops. We'll get there. Come on. Too close to it. Oh, come on. And Control, click on the canvas. And Control, tap on the model to blur the mask. Back into rotate. And you want to think of this as a bone. You'd want to place it where the bone would be. Make sure that it's where the bone is. I can't remember if it was this version or earlier recording. I explained that the orange circle, you can move around the action line, or if you grab the inner circle, move everything, or also the line that connects them all. So I'm placing it about where that bone would be in this creature, and oops. And you'll nearly always have to resculpt the model when you pose it, especially clothing and things like that. this would be a good time to talk about the other transpose. BTS will give you the Transpose Smart Mask tool. If the action line's ever in your way, just click somewhere else and it'll move out of the way for you. This is supposed to follow the curvature of your model. Hold control down and then you start drawing out your action line. It's always a drag to discover that, oh, half an hour ago when you did something, part of the model went shooting off or stayed in the same place and everything else moved. Oh, is that what I was doing? Holding down control. Control click on the mask to draw. Control click on the model, the blur, back to rotate. Sometimes it's a fine line. As you can probably see, it's a good idea to look at your model from all different directions because it's hard to tell where that actually goes. And so forth and so on. You have to drag it pretty far for that this transpose tool to react. I guess it has to do some calculations first before it can start moving. Back to rotate. So that's how you use transpose for topological masking. A couple other things I want to show you how to do. I got the draw palette selected over here. Let's go down to Initialize Palette, grab a cube. When using images on the grid, it's called floor over here, this button here. So I've got the X, Y, and Z all turned on. In the draw palette, there's front to back, up, down, left, and right over here. You open that, and then there's the right and then the left. When there's no image, it just says map 1 and map 2. You want to go into Texture, Import, and you go to wherever you have your images. Map 1 will be the right. So take that in there and we adjust. Take the edges of the image like so. Just like that. Then you hit OK, and there's your first image. So that's how you set up the planes, your images on the grid. You need to go through each one of those, and then if you have to adjust it by whether you flip it or rotate it, sometimes you have to do that. Flip, inverse, rotate. Inverse will change the, here I'll show you. Of course you have to have the right image selected. See, it inverses the colors. And the other image is for the other side. So you can have two different images, right and left. And you can use the same image if you want. That's what one is for up here next to the images in the thumbnails. So anyway, that's how you load the images. Okay, I'm going to mask off this corner. Then control click. Mask this corner. Control click. And then with the Transpose tool, control click and drag to clear the mask. We're in fill mode 3 right now, which deals with transparency. It's 0, there's no image. But right here, the E enhance factor, I think that's edge enhance factor and edge enhance opacity. We'll let you adjust that. So I'm just setting these corners. BZM. Okay. Alt click to tag that face there. And we're going to set the face to QMesh and single poly. You see that red line that's going down the grip of the gun as I pull it down? that's showing you where that edge is lining up with the image, which makes it handy for if you want to do it like I'm doing at 3/4 or whatever. So I'm going to start pulling again and hit shift, hold shift down, pull it down the rest of the way, and pull it a little bit too far maybe. So it's again holding shift. There we go. Now rotate. I control clicked to inverse the mask. Rotate. And let's just mask off this point there. So line that up and control click and drag to clear the mask. Mask off that edge there. Inverse the mask and then oops, missing some. Clear the mask again. Huh. Oh, I'm using rotate. That's what the problem was. Back to draw mode. BZM for Z modeler brush. I'm going to put an edge loop right there. Whoops, I gotta clear the mask. Undo that. Clear the mask. Move. Back to draw. Okay, now it looks like this image was shot, no pun intended. There's a slight angle this way, so like this barrel is not centered. I got the image from blueprints.com. They have a lot of free blueprints. They also have vector drawings, but those cost. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time with this tutorial, but I thought you should at least see this kind of workflow using the Transpose tool. It's really cool. I like it a lot. You just keep the polygon count really low. Alt and tag these faces. Edge loop there. Stitch these points together. Like so. Back into draw. I have masking on. Turn on symmetry X. Weird. Okay. Oh, no, it says non-symmetrical operation canceled. Okay, mirror and weld. Oh, I want to put an edge loop down here. Alt, tag these faces. one in here. Alt, tag those faces. Key mesh it on through. D for dynamic subdivision, just to get an idea what it's looking like. Some creasing, that'll be awesome. This is how I would work with reference and the ZModeler brush. Not quite sure what's going on back here. I need to find a 3/4 view of the Walter PPK. Okay, slide. Stitching points here. A little bit of shift, smoothing, find out why or what's going on here. Usually, or when it doesn't want to do what you want it to, it sometimes has kind of hidden geometry. Anyway, that's how I would deal with all this. I didn't want to get it this far into it. Oh, there was another thing with transpose line for measuring. Up in the left-hand corner up here, it says 1.6007 units. If you're doing, like, this creature was supposed to be 12 heads tall, maybe, or whatever, you could set the transpose line to the height of the creature. Let's say that's it. Then you go into preferences, and transpose set units, or is it calibration distance? No. Yeah, you'd want to set this to 1. Remember right? So then up here it says 1 unit. So then you could measure how tall this creature is. And right now it's 5.7797 units. Well, it's to the top of its neck. Then I guess you could also say, oh, when it straightens out its neck, it'd be looking straight up. 3.149 heads long. Anyway, you can use the transpose line to measure. Ryan did a really cool tutorial once making a measuring guide that was the golden mean, so you can measure the facial features and how they related to each other. It was awesome. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this tutorial, and if I didn't cover something, or if you want something to be cleared up, let me know. I'll do my best to try to help you out. Okay, I got all the way done with editing. I was about ready to start rendering the video and realized there was one thing I forgot to mention. It's a rather major function, I think. It's probably not the best model to show this with. Using the middle button with Alt, it will bend or deform the model. It can come in very, very handy for all kinds of things. And I've noticed that you can do some really drastic moves with that. It only affects the area right beneath the transpose line. It won't affect anything beyond the ends of it. Oh, yeah, I should probably also mention Transpose Master. So up in the Z plugin, let's just dock this over here on the right-hand tray, is Transpose Master. Now, if you don't turn groups on, if I remember right, you end up with no groups after you come back from Transpose Master. So I usually turn groups on and T-pose mesh to begin. And depending on how huge your model is, this is 4.05 million points, so it might take a while. You also want to name a different name for each of the subtools, and it'll tell you if you have 2 subtools that are named the same thing, because it confuses it. So it made a clone of all the subtools combined, as you can see here in the subtool palette. We'll just do a quick mask job here. I don't use topological masking very much. I don't really like it. You can do whatever you want to whatever part of the model you want. I'm not going to do anything special here. I'm just going to show you that you can move all these different things around, even though they are going to be separate subtools. When you're all done with your posing, then you T-pose to sub-T, and it's going to align all your subtools to whatever you did in Transpose Master land. Just like that. So it looks just like it did in there, but now it's all separate subtools. I'm hitting the down arrow key. It'll switch subtools. The up arrow key as well, only going up. Imagine that. So that was a super quick tour of Subtool Master. If you ever want to move your model to a different position or something like that, but you have subtools, then you can use Transpose Master and you'll be able to do whatever you wanted with your model. Like maybe you want to unify it or something like that, or grow it. You want all the subtools to grow at the same rate. It would be really hard to do it one at a time. So Subtool Master is your friend. All right. May the forums be with you.